That's it. February 4th, 2026. We are in the fourth year day 346 since the beginning of the full inversion. Welcome, I greet you. Regarding the situation report, in today's report, we see an extremely interesting transformation within the Russian army. We also see how people here in Ukraine and also in Russia are somehow enduring these really very cold temperatures. We also see insights into the Russian economy, additional war crimes, and more. But first, Pat, you all know Pat. He runs the merchandise shop for me. And of course, we also know him from all the vehicles we've brought to Ukraine through our fundraising campaigns. Or rather, the ones he has partly brought to Ukraine himself. Because on his trips there, he always grabbed one of the donated vehicles and delivered it. He once made a video about what such a trip is actually like and what he saw on his last journey. In particular, rocket attacks in Kharkiv, where he was actually there in person. I promised him I would mention the video here. It's really very interesting and is about 10 minutes long. It's kept short and compact as usual on the channel and offers an interesting look into a helper's perspective, which many don't know about. I've linked the video for you in the video description, and we'll probably link it again at the end of the video, in the credits, so you can easily find it. Above all, he also talks about global positioning system outages, and where there absolutely must not be any global positioning system outages. This is especially important for drone technology, especially if you must use Russian alternatives, which are less accurate. That's why there are many drones on which Russian soldiers have attached Starlink terminals. And on one of these Starlink terminals, as we can see here, it was mounted on a Russian Gerbera drone. Did the Russians leave a little message? It says something like Elon Musk is a fag. That probably comes from the fact that he made sure the Russians can no longer use the Starlink terminals at speeds above 75 km/h. That's obviously bad for a drone, especially one going about 160 km/h. It's their way of showing frustration. The Gerbera is an interesting drone that can serve as a kamikaze or perform reconnaissance missions. It can relay signals to extend the range of other drones or to increase their resistance to electronic warfare. Likewise, you can have it fly in a Shahed swarm, imitating the Shahed or Duran-2 drones, and thus partially protecting it from air defenses. And the thing is mainly made of foam and is supposed to be quite cheap to produce. However, the battery life and the range of just under 600 km are quite low. Compared to other drones, it's usually sufficient. So much for the drone. It's actually not bad. I think the last thing I read about it was that it's supposed to cost around $10,000 per drone, which is of course quite cheap compared to a Shahed, especially if you use it as a decoy anyway, or if you can use it as a fairly modular platform. This is one of the coldest, harshest winters in Ukraine and Russia in recent years, and a brutal war is raging during this weather. Soldiers are usually the ones who are doing well in this war, or in general, soldiers usually do well in wars. They are supplied periodically, and usually they are taken care of better than the local population, and especially better than the people in the occupied territories. After all, they are on the front lines and, in theory, make a difference that can later be measured on the ground. Russia has nearly destroyed the energy infrastructure in most major cities, severely impacting energy producers. As a result, many people are freezing. This mainly affects the elderly, children, and newborns. In contrast, there are numerous examples of solidarity in Kiev, especially in the heavily affected district of Dniprovsky, where a man from Kazakhstan, named Marat, has set up a heated yurt. There he cooks hot meals and gives people at least temporary shelter from the cold and something warm to eat. While Russia is deliberately trying to freeze Ukraine by attacking its energy and heating infrastructure, a different picture is emerging in its own country at the same time. According to Novaya Gazeta Europe, there were more than 1,700 publicly known disruptions to water supply, electricity, and heating in Russia in January alone. That's nearly double compared to last January. Belgorod, Murmansk, and Krasnodar regions were especially impacted, with Ukrainian drones frequently using energy there. Many people go weeks without water, melt snow to cook, store food outside due to broken refrigerators, and endure apartment temperatures as low as -10 degrees. People are using gas stoves to heat if they can find them. The main issue is the poor infrastructure. About 40% of Russia's networks are worn out on average, and in some areas, this rises to 80%. However, only a small portion of needed renewals occur annually. The irony is especially bitter in some places. In Ingles, for instance, residents are desperately seeking help due to a lack of heating and hot water. Of all places, it's in the city where Russia's strategic bomber fleet takes off from the military airfield to attack Ukrainian energy facilities and plunge cities into darkness and cold. Border Guard units are also currently deployed in the Pokrovsk area. There, they were able to rescue a soldier on the Russian side who was already showing clear signs of hypothermia. Despite ongoing shelling, he was evacuated to a relatively safe area. These contrasts are hard to miss. Billions in rockets and drones are sent, but civilians on both sides face cold, darkness, and supply shortages. Support for the people of Ukraine is especially important as they face extreme winter conditions. Let's focus on Pokrovsk for now. We have another territorial gain here. Yesterday, we examined the one southwest near Udakny. Today, we have the next Ukrainian back here in the dark red area and managed to create another buffer between the city and the Ukrainian lines. The Ukrainians are now roughly at this position. This is where they were last seen, while for several hours or days, there has hardly been any geolocation from the area north of Pokrovsk. The Russians are attacking in two directions, once to the north towards Rudinsky and here towards Treshin. But it's not just about gaining ground. There's also a rather interesting change on the Russian side, because a bit further to the northeast, right here, at this point, the 120th was located. The Marine Infantry Division was relocated near the 55th Marine Infantry Division. What is the 55th Marine Infantry Division and why is it important? Well, I'm sure that many of you haven't heard of this division yet, but you actually already know it very, very well, especially viewers who frequently visit this channel. After the Ukrainians restructured their military into a corps structure, Russian forces are now also undergoing a comprehensive structural reorganization, gradually reverting from a brigade structure back to a divisional structure. The goal is to establish larger units with more independence and staying power, at least on paper. The clearest and confirmed case so far is the transformation of the well-known 155th Naval Infantry Brigade of the Pacific Fleet into the 55th Naval Infantry Division. This makes it the most recent and well-known example of a brigade that has been officially converted into a division. On the Russian side, they call it an upgrade. The 200th Independent Motorized Rifle Brigade was previously turned into the 71st Guards Rifle Division. Both cases are part of a larger plan that then Defense Minister Shoigu already announced in 2022, the formation of a total of 17 new divisions. The story of the 155th Naval Infantry Brigade is especially remarkable and significant. This unit is considered one of the unluckiest and most casualty-heavy formations of the Russian army in this war. The losses were so high I had to make a separate video about it, and that was back in 2023. It was deployed multiple times at Buladard and was nearly wiped out each time. In one of the most well-known cases, the brigade advanced head-on through a known minefield, which led to catastrophic losses. Only about 13% survived the average attack. According to estimates, at times only 2 to 3% of the unit consisted of soldiers who had served here before the war, meaning they were part of the original core unit. The rest had fallen or were constantly replaced by new recruits. Despite these losses, the unit was repeatedly reformed and redeployed, raising a long-standing question: how much longer could this brigade survive? Later, it was also deployed in the Kursk area, where Ukrainian forces carried out a precise strike that wiped out almost the entire command staff of the unit. Against this background, the transformation into a division seems less like a sign of strength or an upgrade, and more like an organizational makeover for a severely depleted unit made up of soldiers with hardly any combat experience. Analysts also point out that many of the newly formed divisions have not even reached their intended full strength. Heavy losses, ongoing combat operations, and personnel issues are preventing a full replenishment. But we see similar things on the Ukrainian side as well. This is not just a problem on the Russian side. I want to make that very clear. But many things also remain unclear regarding the announced Marine infantry divisions. While the Russian Ministry of Defense talks about 5 new divisions, so far only one has been officially confirmed. The reorganization seems less like a major change and more like an attempt to hide structural issues. However, the return to the divisional structure is meant to signal the ability to act. In many cases, however, such a large unit exists more on paper than in the field, since it still has to carry the legacy issues of previous years. Russian oil and power plant revenues in January fell by about half from a year earlier, hitting their lowest point since July 2020, according to Reuters. Specifically, the Russian state took in around 393 billion rubles in January, significantly less than in December and considerably less than the year before. This is mainly due to lower global oil prices and a stronger ruble, which reduce export earnings. Oil and gas revenues are crucial for Russia, accounting for a quarter of its state income. The budget is under major pressure, as military and internal security tasks have grown significantly since the war against Ukraine began. At the time, no one thought the war would last over 3 days. By late 2025, a huge 5.6 trillion ruble budget deficit remained unbalanced. On the Russian side, they assume that they will make more revenue in the energy sector this year, but last year it already dropped by 24%, so that could be quite difficult. There's widespread panic and a search for solutions, as this remains Russia's main financial source and can't weaken during war. Thanks to all subscribers, channel members, the Algo crew, and special thanks to Lieutenant Colonel Rennecke, Robert Ziller, and Dietrich Freya Meyerhofer. Please subscribe, like, comment, and see you in the next situation report.